Hey everyone, Andrew with Body Fuel here. We're going to do a short course on blood work for athletes, getting started with iron. There are several pieces or components to blood work that we should get done at the beginning of the season. Iron, I think, is one of the most important, next to vitamin D, which we'll cover in the next podcast. In a 2005 study, they showed that recreational athletes, 36% of those women were iron deficient, only 6% of men. The reason why there's such a wide gap there is men typically eat more red meat in their diet, getting greater sources of heme iron. Plant-based iron is not as absorbed by the body. It's not as bioavailable. Vegans in general, if you remember from the vegan podcast we did, require 1.8 times more iron than a non-vegan just to get the appropriate amounts in. And then when we start to factor in the athletic component of what we're doing in endurance sports like running, and then adding that into altitude like here in Colorado, New Mexico, anywhere really above 3,000 feet, the demands and the requirement for iron are higher. Iron losses, that is, come from the GI tract. There is small amounts of bleeding in the GI tract. Ground impact, every time you go out and run, you get small micro traumas in the feet. We actually sweat out a great deal of iron. Altitude increases the needs, and if you're a female, the menstrual cycle has greater demands on your iron overall, which is why it's very important that women probably get tested at the beginning of the season. I wouldn't say more than men, but I think women really need to say, this is something I need to do before I get started with a training plan. Why does iron matter overall? Well, first of all, I want to start with, if you have depleted iron stores and you're working on a deficiency, it can take up to 12 months to bring that back. That pretty much means for the entire season or that entire 12-month period, you're kind of toasted on your training ability, because iron deficiency or iron reduction or capacity reduces your performance ability. Essentially, your aerobic capacity is nullified. It hurts. It's hard. You can't breathe. There's just simply not enough oxygen going into the blood to fuel the exercise that you're doing. So there are 3 stages of iron deficiency, and it starts out as depleted stores, simply not having enough iron stored in the body for it to pull from. That transitions into early functional iron deficiency, where you don't quite see anemia in the blood tests, but your performance is affected with a decrease in aerobic capacity. As the depleted stores turn into early functional iron deficiency and your capacity is reduced, if you continue to train, you will get into anemia, a full-on deficiency, at which point you will have very difficult time breathing or performing any work. Your increased needs from endurance training is more red blood cells are created to support the capacity or the need on oxygen for the work you're doing. That alone increases the need for more iron. They're creating more red blood cells. The red blood cells need the iron to bind the oxygen. Therefore, you need more, not including the other losses that we talked about. Let's review those. GI tract bleeding, ground impact bleeding. And that's not like you're saying your feet are swelling up with bruises. It's just the micro traumas of the impact constantly cause small amounts of iron loss. Again, you're sweating, the high altitude, and if you're a female with your menstrual cycle, now you compound that on with your aerobic needs and you're developing more red blood cells. Now you have a greater need for iron. So what's the end result? What should you do? First of all, you should get tested at the beginning of your training season and the off season to make sure that you have the adequate amounts of stores. As a dietitian, I have a list or a letter that I send with my athletes to the doctor to say, hey, I would like this part of the blood work tested, and there are 2 or 3 iron-specific components that I send with them. Get tested if you're in the middle of the season or early season and your fatigue is persisting and your training ability is declining. That's a pretty good sign that you need to go have your blood work tested for iron and a couple other things, but iron would be the first. And most importantly, don't self-treat or self-medicate or self-supplement with iron. Iron is very toxic. I don't recommend you going to buy iron tablets or taking a bunch of multivitamins to try to replace this. If you do in fact feel that you have an iron deficiency, or you've gone to the doctor and said, yes, we do have an iron deficiency here, or your stores are low, they will provide you with appropriate amounts of supplements, how long to take them, and then follow up with the appropriate blood tests. And that's what's important. We want to make sure that we get the appropriate repletion, that we're not going to build up toxic levels, and that we're followed. That we actually start this in the beginning of the season. Don't go all the way through, train for 6 months, and find out that you're iron depleted, and now in your race in 2 to 3 months, you're really going to be subpar, or you're restricted from participating. So as a summary really quick, iron, one of the things in your blood work at the beginning of the season, or that you should get tested, or if you're feeling fatigued and your aerobic capacity is declining, let's go get tested. Work with your doctor to get medicated for supplements, and then as a sports dietitian, I'm here to help you determine where your diet nutritional deficiencies are, how we can improve iron in your diet, things like adding citric acid or vitamin C to your meal times will help absorption of iron. Adding green smoothies into a daily meal plan so that you can get the non-heme iron but get more of it at altitude. Those are the types of things that as dietitians we help with, that your physicians can help with, and that you need to actively be looking out for yourself when you go to the doctor, because you'll go in for tests. Nothing against doctors. They're fantastic, but they don't know what you do, and a lot of them have no idea what the sport of triathlon, ultra running, or even long distance marathon running truly entails on a year-round athlete. Now, if you are getting started from like a couch to half marathon or a couch to 10K, it does not hurt to go into your doctor to let them know what it is that you're getting ready to do. You want to make sure that you get the appropriate blood work. Come talk to me. We'll work out a letter to say, hey, this is what we think we're doing. We'd like to collaborate as practitioners, dietitian in your primary care, and make sure that you have the appropriate blood work done so that you can get started on the right foot. Thanks for joining me today. Again, you can find this on SoundCloud if you want to listen, YouTube if you want to watch. Those of you who are watching, you have my notes here on the YouTube screen, which is super helpful. You'll notice I did not give any recommendations for supplementing or how much you should have daily. I don't give out medical advice on the internet, so to speak, but you can call me. We can do an eligibility check on your insurance, or I do cash pay. You can come see me as a single service client. But looking forward to helping you out and make sure that you're doing the appropriate thing to keep yourself healthy. I'll look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.